All right, thank you for staying. Now, the Chief Justice of the Federation, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, on Monday sworn in members of the Election Petition Tribunal for the 2023 general elections in Abuja and warned them against any form of judicial recklessness. However, a senior advocate of Nigeria, Ebun Olu Adegborua, has called on politicians to learn to accept defeat during electoral contest rather than always trying to maneuver their ways to leadership through the judiciary. He warned that if courts continue to choose leaders for the people, elections will soon become irrelevant as more politicians will explore the judiciary to impose themselves on the people. Many past and present governors in Nigeria came into power through court judgment overturning the declaration of the Independent National Electoral Commission. Chairman of the Partners for Electoral Reform and board member of YAGA, Nwagu Ezenwa, joins us in the studio for more perspectives on this. Thank you so much for joining us on Daybreak.
Thank you. Good morning.
You're welcome. All right, well, court cases during electioneering period is very common. I mean, the lead story of the Daily Trust this morning says it all. There's a lot of uncertainty over fate of PDP and APC candidates in 4 states. I think it was yesterday we saw a judgment in Zamfara State where the primaries in the state was nullified by a high court. So, and the INEC chairman recently lamented, I think 2 days ago, he says that it appears that there's increase in the number of cases. He talks about 600 cases arising from primary elections that were held some months back. So what do you think is responsible for this increase in number of litigations?
Well, so it's fair to first situate the fact that I think we overrate our politicians, and we have over-respected them to the point where we don't get interested in the internal governance processes within these political parties, and the consequence is what we have. Now, what do I mean by that? These 600 cases are not election cases. They are party primaries. So what does that mean? Lack of internal party democracy. People who will eventually, our governance, our leadership recruitment procedure comes from the political parties. They themselves cannot organize free, fair, credible, acceptable elections. And so the expectation that, that the main election itself, which we have incrementally, because of our overbearing oversight on INEC, we have at least shifted the needle a little bit in terms of election integrity, credibility, and acceptability. So you are not seeing a lot of litigation on process. Where the bigger crisis is right now is at the political party level. So it just simply calls for attention in that direction. So what do we need to do? What this mode of, primaries, what is the constitution of these political parties? What are their own regulations? Do they abide by those regulations?
Do you think,
if they don't abide, who is calling them out?
Do you think that the new Electoral Act has anything to do with this? Perhaps, a lot of changes have been made, and maybe the political parties and the politicians haven't really acclimatized themselves with some of the provisions and the consequences of some of their actions.
Well, first and foremost, it is their own laws that they violate. The Electoral Act is a broader...
Yes, I'm talking about is their own laws that they violate. And let's look at the most recent of them, Zamfara.
Yes.
In the first instance, Guso, one of the aspirants, went to court challenging the processes that led to the emergence of Dere as their candidate.
Yes.
The court annulled it and called for a rerun.
Yes.
They had a rerun. The same Guso went back to court, challenging the same the process again. Now, in giving the ruling yesterday, the judge said that, first of all, there was supposed to be 21-day notice to INEC before the election held. There was also supposed to be 7-day notice to all the aspirants before the election, and that none of that was complied with. My question is, these people know these things. They know that these are the processes. Why do they deliberately violate them?
So impunity. It's simply impunity. Look, you make laws. This, first and foremost, many people, because of the fluidity of membership, okay, you are this in the morning and in the evening you have become this or that. Many people who even contest under these platforms have no engagement with the documents, with the guiding documents with which you can engage in that political party. So that's why I said, how much investment have we made in strengthening our political party administration and structure? The way we have engaged perhaps INEC. So you find a situation in which there are waivers. You can join in the morning and they just grant you waiver. So the question is, the judiciary is on their own. They are just sitting there waiting for you. If you say, oh, I have been wronged, they say, okay, how have you been wronged? You say, look at our document, look at our rules. If you provide sufficient evidence to show that there is no internal, democracy within your party and that you have been in any way shortchanged, the judiciary will then intervene. So the place to place a lot of attention is in the political parties themselves. So when you said they know, they are the first and foremost, the governors have become imperial lords, in the sense that we allow them to transit from a point in which they get very angry with anything contest. They don't like contest. Okay? We like the word, we gave him the ticket. I don't know if you hear those kind of, we gave him. In democracy, you don't give the ticket. People contest for the ticket, and in a fair process. So when the process is not fair, you don't tell anybody that he should go and fight, he should break up things. The only place to go is to the judiciary. And whether the judiciary makes fair judgment or not, according to their own understanding of your own laws. Because at the end of the day, we are not dealing with electoral. This, the tribunal that was set up is different now. We are dealing with pre-election issues. All pre-election issues are political party affairs. And it boils down to what I'm saying, that they do not have respect for their own laws. They have no respect for their own guidelines. And many of them even do not know what their party represents.
So who is responsible for making sure that they respect their own laws?
We do all. We all do have that responsibility. Did anybody invite us to be talking about INEC? We chose that, look, our election must be such that it needs to be competitive, it needs to be fair, it needs to be credible. And we started investing. Donors, everybody started putting money. You are running programs here that educates the people about these processes. All of that has impacted in the quality of elections. But what do? Because of so many other entanglements around the politician and his political party, we over-respect them. And I've shouted myself hoarse that except we pay attention, you can't have a situation in which one human being has been a member of a political party. In just 2 months, he has recursed 4 political parties. And there's no sanction.
Okay, how do you see this affecting the 2023 election? The INEC chair has said it's affecting preparations ahead of the polls.
This INEC will print ballot papers. A lot of money is invested in logistics. And then at the end of the day, maybe just 1 month to the election, you just come and say, because these things are printed ahead of time. And then the court just says, it is not easy, it's you that is now the candidate. It means that INEC will have to go back. And within that kind of situation, procurement becomes very expensive. So that cost is important. Then the issue of perception as well. How will the citizens perceive these changes? today this person is a candidate of the political party, and then maybe on the strength of that person's personality, they mobilize around that person, and then suddenly the court says, you know, you are not the one, simply because of the mistakes of the political party. So its impact, apart from cost, there are also, you know, psychological impact that it has. But what is important for me, and which is what I have articulated, is that there is a need for us, post-2023, to begin to pay a lot more attention on how we structure, build our political parties in a way that it begins to understand that it has to respect its own rules and guidelines and laws.
All right, while we're talking about, I want you to make a tie between the judiciary and the political parties, because the thing is this, sometimes you hear politicians make statements like, do anything you can to win this election, we'll meet in court, let's go to court. Is it possible that some of them do these things because they know that somehow they can get their way in court? So
there are two-pronged advocacy that I think that we need to engage. First and foremost is that there is still a lot of respect, over-respect from a lord, you know, in the sense in which we also think that they don't play in the political environment. But my sense always is that, hey, I'm here, I'm just here. I'm here. If you don't bring matter to me, I will not come. The person who has the responsibility to do the right thing is the organizers, the political party organizers, who do the wrong thing and then enable people to corrupt this other process. If you want
if
to
those other people take a stand, and
they cannot take
the political parties are sure that if I go there, as long as what I've done is wrong, I'm going to lose.
Let me tell you something. In post 2007, you could be voting, and the result of where you're voting will be announced. When President Musa Yar'Adua won his election, he told us that the process that brought him to power was fraudulent, and he set up the Justice Uwais Electoral Commission. Now, that was the time in which the judiciary, you understand, played this role, this very terrible role that you are talking about, where people just say, okay, anything, stop the ballot box, do whatever you have to do. With the incremental progress in electoral reform processes, you see that people no longer can snatch ballot box. They no longer can stuff it because it's no longer profitable. You no longer can carry as many PVCs as you like because we are now doing bimodal, verification and all the rest of them. When you strengthen your process, the opportunity for conflict is minimized. You get what I'm saying? So if there are times, even when a judge is corrupt, he will look at this one and say, Kai, because there must be something, even if you must provide a technical escape, because there's a review process. The review process also has something to do. If you give a judgment that there is no plank on which that your judgment is given, it reduces your integrity. You understand what I'm saying? So for me, it's strengthening the process. I've always argued, as you strengthen your processes, the opportunity for conflict and litigation is minimized. But if your processes are porous, without integrity, there is nothing anybody can do about that. You just have to go to court. Mm. And courts going to court is also part of the electoral process anyway. Is the end point of the electoral process. So as we are doing advocacy to strengthen INEC, my sense always is that the stakeholdership in the election pyramid is such that for you to have credible elections, you need not just INEC, you need the political parties, you need security agents, and you need the judiciary. But often, if you follow public commentary in Nigeria, 90% of our attention is on INEC. Mm. We hardly pay attention to these other stakeholders whose contribution make or mar our electoral process. We believe that because somebody is a lawyer, because somebody is a judge, that the person has studied the Electoral Act. So there is the place of ignorance, there is the place of mischief. Okay? But advocacy can cure both. advocacy can put people in a position where now the citizens know that if you do this thing, they can call you out. You know, we can't call out judges, even when judges do, on this program now, we will respect the person, even when we know that that judgment is a black market judgment, we will not say anything. We will come here and keep quiet and say it's so that we don't get into contempt of the court. And then that becomes a veneer to protect corrupt individuals who sabotage and subvert the electoral will of the people. So we must broaden our advocacy. And
so
that's
aside advocacy, is there anything else that can be done to stop this? Maybe some kind of gatekeeping that would say, okay, some of these improbable cases, like the INEC chair puts it, do not have to go to the courts to waste the time of the court and waste the time of everybody.
There's the election. We talked about setting up electoral offences commission. We've talked about, you know, unbundling INEC in such a way that it can face this. People have talked about special courts for election-related cases. But my brother, how many special? We have special court for rape, special court for armed robbery, special. So at the end of the day, what will they? All we need to do is this thing called NJC, the National Judicial Council, has to also come to the conversation about electoral reforms. It must come there in a way that it can then tell its judges and say, look, we will sanction you.
Exactly, that's what I was going to ask. Apart from the fact that, okay, when after all of this you go to court and then maybe you lose because maybe what you did was wrong, is there a way that person can be sanctioned to say, okay, you cannot take part in other elections, maybe in the next 2 cycles of election or something like that? Maybe that will check.
Well, it's not in our law. You are talking for you are talking for an amendment. But what I'm saying is, see, the judicial process, incidentally, is in stages. If you lose for pre-election matters, you can get as much as to the Supreme Court, I think. So if you lose in the lower court, you go to appeal. If you are not satisfied with what the Court of Appeal has done, you go to the Judiciary. But all of these remedies, these remedial actions that these courts are supposed to take, is still bent on the integrity of the judiciary itself. Because if at the end of the day, we have seen Supreme Court judgments that even those of us who are called laymen will shudder that the highest court of our land will give that kind of judgment. The Imo one is everywhere, you know, where people are still not come to terms with the fact that somebody who came fourth in an election is now governor of that state. That is notorious. Okay, but what can you do? Because that is what the process has put in place. Any other thing you try to do is extrajudicial, and that is why I pin it on advocacy, which is the one that does not cost us anything. All that we will get is to get an invitation to come to Trust TV and talk about that, and expect that the pressure that we bring to bear, you understand, will have some impact around, you know, little changes. And then we can also name and shame people. You understand? We can name and shame and say, look, the political parties, the particular political parties that are very, very notorious for not obeying their own rules, we can call them out.
I would like you to speak more to the issue of the call for setting up of a pre-election tribunal, pre-election matters tribunal. Perhaps maybe that will deal with some of these issues.
Well, it will only accelerate. That's what it will do. Is you are calling for acceleration, so that. But with the reforms that we have now, most of these cases can no longer just go on terminally in the court. There now has to be a stop. I think we have 160 days to sort out some 180 days to sort out some of these issues. And so we need to also test our processes, because many times we are also in a hurry. We are fire brigade people in the country. We are in a hurry to make changes, but sometimes we need to also be patient with these processes, strengthen them, see their weaknesses, and see how we can, you know, because most of the time we put in something in place and without even running it through, we move to another thing, and then in moving to that other thing, we now prefer to go back to what it's like people telling you now that the parliamentary system is the best, as if we have never practiced parliamentary system. And it was in practicing it that we decided that that was not good enough. We now get to presidential. So the nature of people is that we are in a hurry. There's also a sense in which democracy is about patience, about perseverance, about getting to that point where we know that these things are not microwave, that you don't just put them in and get that. You have to test these processes and also work them out.
All right, you have been talking a lot about advocacy. To what extent is Yaga, for instance, going in changing the orientation of politicians? Because most of these problems stems from the do or die attitude, do or die belief that you must win. So the spirit of sportsmanship is not there. People don't want to lose. So what can be done to change the orientation of politicians towards that?
First is that for us, there's a limit, because you must always know where your limit. As a civil society organization or the media, your work stops at calling attention. When you call attention to an issue, you put the pressure on the duty bearers to make the changes. Okay? So what have we done? We tried to observe the party primaries. For the first time, civil society was beginning interested in observing those party primaries. But you know what happens? These folks are impossible. Oftentimes, you have to claim what you are not to be able to. Once you say you are this organization, they refuse you accreditation. So you have to either now become media or something to be able to get there. And when you get that, you do a report. You even want to engage them. The dominant political parties are so arrogant to the point that they don't even attend trainings. You put trainings together for them. They send middle level staff if they even will come at all. Okay? So the pressure has to come from the top. There has to be that point in which we say enough. This is now enough. Because if you say, look, for instance, the constitution of the resident electoral commissioners. We identified folks who had tainted past. And we called attention. We petitioned the National Assembly, only for the National Assembly to say the reason we cleared them is that you people did not attach any affidavit. It not on the basis of the fact that the issue you raised is not fundamental. It is that when we saw your petition, you didn't attach any affidavit. But somebody who contested election as governor in a state recently will sit pretty as a resident electoral commissioner. Governors have hijacked the appointment of people into an institution as sacred as INEC. That we have called attention to that. We have put that on the public domain. We have gone to the duty bearers to make the change. That's why I told you about limitations. So we can't. So, okay, maybe you do a protest, which is the end point. But protest in itself is not an end, it's a means to drawing attention.
But isn't it worrisome that as our democracy grows, we have more of these problems?
Well, it's because we are not the people who are running, the people who took over from the military, rather than expand the democratic space, are constricting it.
So will you say our democracy is improving?
Well, there are pockets of efficiency. You can find some pockets of improvement. I told you one, that, you could just be going to vote and then suddenly they're announcing where you are voting and then you have left that. So that Egypt is in your past. You have come to a point where every change that you make brings its new challenges. And you don't outsource those challenges. The challenge with us is that we outsource those challenges when they come. because there are people whose job is to see how to subvert the progress that you are making. Like you said, there are people who want dubious advantage. They don't want competition. The idea of competition annoys them. Today now, you have many more members of the National Assembly not returning. Not because they have not performed, but because their governors don't want them. So you have a set of people who have hijacked first the political party machinery and administration in their states. And it is inherited by somebody who has a command mentality, who became the president, the first president when we transited. A military man who was not ready to civilianize. He didn't have the idea that anybody could challenge him in any way. So he likes the word, I gave you the ticket. If you don't want, I remove you. So he went to remove somebody in Jos. He went to remove somebody. He left
power a long time ago. He cannot be held responsible for what parties are doing today.
So what you inherit, you see, this is sweet now. Adisa Akinloye, MPN chairman, will have party meeting in the party secretariat. When these folks came, they took party meetings to Government House and the Villa. That's where party meetings now held. The president himself was a visitor to the party meeting because he's just a party member. This is not long ago. So when you say he can't be held, what you put in place, the people who took over from you did not continues to replicate that. Is that not what we did with the colonial masters? When the colonial masters left, the people who took over from the colonial masters did not delink from the colonial masters. They became the new colonial masters.
But it is the duty of those people to delink.
They didn't. And so they continued. So that's the pattern that we have in our country. We don't have people saying, look, this thing that this man did was bad.
So are these not things that legal reforms can take care of, can deal with? And how much of it do we need to checkmate this?
My brother, how does legal reform check when you want to have a party chairman? Okay, the governor says it's Eze that will be party chairman. And everybody says, Rankadede.
How did the governor get that such power? I mean,
I've just told you where it came from. When, let me call names, when President Obasanjo came in 1999, he appropriated the position of the leader of the party that is not in the constitution of their party.
But what is the duty of the people? The people, like he just asked.
The party itself.
Yes,
the
people.
So the party, for instance, in the state, let's use the state for instance, the party has no members. That's why you can move in the morning and move in the evening. The governor funds the party. The only parties that are in existence are the ones that are in government, right? Remember that when Atahiru Bafara was in Sokoto, when he left the AMPP, right, and joined the DPP, DPP was everywhere. Where is DPP now? Olusegun Mimiko left PDP and joined Labour Party. When he left Labour Party, what happened? When Orji Zukalu left PPA and went back to PDP, where is PPA today? What I'm telling you is that because the resources of the state is what is used to drive these structures, politicians have emasculated these structures in a way that when you are coming to a party meeting in Abuja, somebody pays your transport, feeds you, accommodates you, gives you money when you are going back home. You cannot, your stakeholdership in that party is already diminished.
So what can we do in such a way what can we do to move the party from an individual? Because all you're saying is like a party is an individual. Like one person is in charge and all of that.
Am I inventing this matter?
What can we do to move from that?
What we can do is to begin to reorganize the political parties in a way that people can pay membership dues. in a way that they can. When PDP started, it had a PDI, People's Democratic Institute, where it sent its cadres, you understand, to be schooled on whatever it is, the ideology of that party, just like the Action Congress, Action Group of old. Now, these things have died. We need to restore a situation in which we will cancel this waiver. So the basis of your being an APC member is because you subscribe to the ideology, whatever it is, of the APC or whatever, or the Action AAA, AAC, whatever political party you belong to. It has to be such that you belong, PRP, you belong to that organization and you are paying membership dues and you are making contributions to that party in a way that you can raise up your stakeholdership. Because it's about stakeholdership. I cannot be the one that will pay for your secretariat, and you come and tell me that that I can't tell you what to do.
As it stands now, for majority of Nigerians, political parties are merely platforms where they can get certain, favors or certain privileges, appointments, and the rest of them. That's all. But how do we get Nigerians to begin to see political party platforms as platforms that their lives and the lives of and the future of the country depends on it, really?
I think the reason you invited me is to do that, and that's what we've been doing since morning, to alert Nigerians to the fact that if we continue to personalize political parties the way we are doing, the changes that we are looking forward to will not happen. Even just look at the most celebrated. Somebody joined a political party and became the presidential candidate. What happened to the folks who have been there before? What did he do to become the presidential candidate? Was it cheap? Nobody is interrogating that. And those are principled issues. Because if you don't raise those principled issues, then the outcome cannot be different. So what we have done is that every opportunity we have, like you've given me this opportunity now, we put that out very strongly, that our expectations are proportionate to the work that we do in the leadership recruitment process and platforms. If we don't do that work, we will not get the outcomes. So, for instance, you come to party primaries. Whether it is direct or indirect, you find out that people are selling their properties to become member of House of Assembly. Somebody has to, in some states, you have to sell your house. You have to give people cars. You have to give people motorbikes. You have to give people sewing machines. When you win that election, I don't know how those people who collected those bikes will come back to you to talk about good governance.
They've collected their good governance in the form of those machines, right?
So there is a thinking. Nobody talks about that. But that's how that man became that thing that you are talking about. That was it. I was on television. I finished. A friend of mine in the National Assembly said, when you say these things, you are calling me thief. I'm your friend. I saw you virtually. You are virtually saying I'm a thief. But come to think of it, I sold 2 of my houses. I now asked him, I said, must you sell 2 of your houses? Must you go to House of Assembly? If the condition to go to the place. So there are issues, big issues that we are not putting on.
So it appears the issue of the having a smooth process, electoral process, is merely not just the function of the judiciary, as we are saying. The judiciary's role is limited, or I would say the judiciary will have less business to deal with if we have, a better party structure.
If we run our political primaries well, if we run our elections according to the laws, because all these are law-guided issues. A political party cannot exist without a constitution, Abby. It cannot exist without regulations. Our elections are conducted under acts, electoral acts. If it is the violation of it that brings in the judiciary. And that's what I'm talking about. The judiciary, really, if you don't invite them, if you win your election fair and square and nobody approaches the court the court would, the tribunal will just sit there and do nothing. In many cases, the judiciary, in many cases, we've seen good episodic judgments that come from the judiciary that actually restores confidence and hope in the electoral process. We have seen the bad ones as well. But what I always ask is, if we don't go to court, what is the alternative? Because when we say don't go to court, we are saying people should do some other thing. So the court itself is an integral part of the electoral process. All of these needs is strengthening. Strengthen your electoral process, strengthen the political party structures and administration in a way that it can birth, a child that is not disabled, that has no disabilities. If you do that, then that's the end of the matter. So every day, as far as we talk about electoral reforms, let us have a 3-pronged or 4-pronged engagement with it. The first is that it is not just INEC that determines whether we have a good election. To consolidate this democracy, we must pay attention to the political parties. Another set of people that you cannot play with is the security agencies. They can play good role, they can also be a disaster. Then INEC itself, we must not let them off, because there are still elements within INEC who want people to win elections inside INEC rather than at the polling unit. Okay, so if you let them off, you also embody them, and they're at work right now. Those people are still at work. They are not happy that you can now sit in your house and see the results through the results, INEC results viewing portal. There are people who that angers, because that is democracy. The fact that in the US, somebody can sit down and observe and monitor these processes is a lot of gain. And we must ensure that there are no reversals.
All right. All right, thank you so much. It's a good place to end the discussion. We appreciate you coming on Daybreak and sharing your insight with us. Thank you. Our guest is the chairman of Partners for Electoral Reform and board member of Yaga Africa. He is Nwagu Ezenwa. We were unable to get other guests who could join us virtually, talking about Ibrahim Zikrulai, who is the Executive Director, Resource Center for Human Rights and Civic Education. That's our show for today. In case you have missed, you can always catch up across all our social media platforms and also on our YouTube channel, where we stream live 24/7. My name is Ayuba Ilya.
Thank you once again for joining us this morning. Do well to join us same time, same station tomorrow. My name is Stella Yajan. Do have a very pleasant day.